first thing that we are cooking today, actually the only thing today, is sea bass, which is what I get most questions on because people don't know how to prepare it. And a lot of times they cook it too fast. This is a longer process with sea bass. The first thing I do is I put Italian herb seasoning on it. So you just grind it over it. Just take the sea bass out, grind it over it, put a little bit of Italian herb seasoning, as well as salt and pepper. I would go lighter, or honestly, I don't think it needs any salt. So if you can do it with no salt, you've got a better chance of not dealing with retention or sodium buildup. But load it with Italian herb seasoning as much as you want. That's step one before you put it in the chicken broth. We'll get there in a second. Okay, so I put Italian herb seasoning on all of this. The only other thing I added was black pepper, okay? Black pepper, you can add salt. In my opinion, it doesn't need it. So why waste your sodium intake on salt? It really doesn't need it. I've tried it both ways and I don't notice a taste change. So you can add sea salt or Himalayan, but I would not. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get the pan ready with chicken broth, low or no sodium. That's important, low or no sodium chicken broth, because I'm gonna marinate onions. Okay, so that's step two. After you put the seasoning on the fish, I just put a little bit of broth. And as you do this, I've got it on about a 3 to 5 heat. If you see the broth cook out, I would suggest adding more, so keep the broth handy. All I'm doing is marinating onions, which is really good. When you get to the listen to your body phase, add a few jalapeno. It gives it some really good flavor. But in the first 30, we don't do peppers because of GI tract stuff. So just the broth right now. Okay, so what I'm doing is I am sauteing onion in broth, low or no sodium chicken broth. You do not have to use oil. I've got it on a medium heat. I do have jalapenos in this because I'm kind of doing the listen to your body version. All you do for the first 30 days is simply remove the jalapenos and you'll have the same effect. I just do it for a little bit of kick when I'm doing scallops and sea bass for the first 30. So doing that, now I'm gonna do cabbage steaks, really easy. If you think of the word steak, it's about a 1/4 inch thick. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is cut off the base of the cabbage. Takes a little bit of muscle, so to speak, because you don't want that thick part in there. All you do is cut that off, throw it away, unless you're gonna cook it for a long time. So then I do cabbage steaks. I've got a cookie sheet, just like you're cooking anything, with a piece of aluminum. I'm gonna do about a 1/4 inch, and you can start with the smallest piece. Do not throw it away. Actually, this is the best piece for it. It's where turn it up. Okay, then go about a 1/4 inch thick on the rest of the steak part, and just start laying it down on the cookie sheet. It's pretty easy. This is a different way to do cabbage. A lot of times, if you're cooking cabbage, you think it takes too long. This is about a 15-minute process that does not take forever. Just cook it thin. You can do as many as you want. And by the way, this is cheap. If you look at the cost of a cabbage, this is a lot of food as a side for very little money. In a minute, we'll get to how you cook it. But at the end of the day, about a 1/4 inch thick is all you do. Until your cookie sheet is full, you'll feed a lot of people with this. And it's actually very, very good for you. Okay, so these are cabbage steaks, which are a really easy way to do one of your vegetables on the list, so you don't have to overthink it. They're about a 1/4 inch thick, which is why I call them steaks. I put the exact same seasoning that I put on the sea bass on the cabbage steaks. It's called Italian herb seasoning. You can find it in any grocery store, and honestly, I load it. I put it pretty daggone thick. I also add black pepper to it for flavor. Again, you can add sea salt, but I'm not a fan of loading salt in us because it creates inflammation. So if you can stay away from it, great. You're gonna cook these on 400. You're gonna preset your oven to 400 and bake it for about 15 minutes. The way to know that it is done, it starts to brown a little bit, particularly around the edges. You'll notice it kind of flakes off, and that way you know it's done. If you want to cook more, then you kind of know that you can kind of bake it to a crisp But for me, you'll start to see it get kind of wet. Cabbage has water in it. So if you bake it on about 400 for about 15 minutes, it's definitely cooked. It takes a while to chew and eat, which psychology-wise, it actually does something for you there. So you don't eat it really quick and want something else. You give your stomach time to catch up. Enjoy. These are popular, extremely healthy for you, very high nutrients. So you're actually getting something out of it. Enjoy. Okay, so now we're ready to actually put the sea bass in the pan. I've been sauteing the onions for a minute. If you notice the discoloration, it's from the broth. The broth will burn in a little bit, and you gotta keep reapplying depending on the heat of your thing. So I'm gonna set everything aside, kind of put it on the edges, because I'll end up putting it on the fish as it cooks. But in the meantime, we're gonna make sure there's enough broth in here, which I've already done. I put everything to the edge, and I'm literally gonna mesh in the fish. Where is my fish? Which is here. So I'm literally just gonna take each piece and push it to the side. Normally I'm cooking 2 pieces. Right now I'm cooking 5. There is some bone typically in sea bass, so be careful if you're cooking this for the first time. So I'll literally put it in. I'll just kind of figure out where everything's at. I've got it on about a medium heat for literally about 5 minutes as it's covered. And in about 5 minutes, I'm gonna cut this all the way down to low. Maybe about a 2 heat at the most. While it gets hot, I'm gonna move it around. I'm never gonna turn it. I'm never gonna flip sea bass. I'm literally just gonna move it around to make sure it's not sticking with the broth. I'll end up throwing some of the onion on it, which you'll see here in a bit, but I'm never gonna turn it. It's not a steak. You're not gonna flip it, that kind of thing. It's gonna cook in to the point that a fork can go right through it. Stay tuned. All right, so I've got the cabbage steaks. This was easy, y'all. All I did was cut these about a 1/4 inch thick and loaded them with Italian herb seasoning and a little bit of black pepper. I'm gonna cook them on 400 for about 15 minutes. If you're wondering when these are done, when you start to see it brown, the edges will brown, it tells you when it's done. So I'm gonna throw these in here. I got a good batch today. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed your sea bass and cabbage steaks. Very, very clean, approvable in the very first day of this program. Follow us each week. Next week we're gonna come with a very popular question. How in the world do I cook eggs without oil? I'll be doing that for you next week. See you soon.